Moving on to Kingsbury and Caleb Williams. So I think this is interesting. So it was reported that Kingsbury was going to go and be the offensive coordinator for the Raiders. It was basically a done deal. And then the next thing you know, he backs out of being the offensive coordinator with the Raiders and he goes to Washington. Now, obviously, Washington ponied up the money and probably paid him more than what he was going to get. You know, agents are involved. But he's going to Washington. And he's going to be their offensive coordinator. Either one is fine with me. I mean, I think Kingsbury, I think he can be a good offensive coordinator in the National Football League. Can he be a head coach? No, because he's not a leader of men. So he's not going to be a good head coach. I think he can be a good offensive-minded and a good offensive-minded coordinator. I think that's his calling. Unless he wants to go back to college, which I don't think that he does at this point. I think he wants to stay in the NFL. Well, if that's the case, he's at Washington. Washington's got the number 2 pick. Who did he coach this past season? That would be Caleb Williams. And the pressure is going to be on. I know they're talking about trading up or possibly trading up with Chicago. If I'm Washington, I don't do that. Y'all let me know what you think, but I don't trade up with Chicago from 2-1 to draft Caleb Williams. And that has nothing to do with Caleb Williams' ability to play football. I think he's going to be a fine NFL quarterback. People keep saying he's generational, which people throw around the word generational like people change underwear. Like suddenly everybody that's really good, all of a sudden they're generational. I mean, come on, people. Generational is LeBron. Generational is Michael Jordan. Everybody isn't generational because they're good, okay? Or because they're great. So we got to stop that. But if I'm Chicago, or if I'm Washington, I should say, I don't press that tree and jump up to go draft Caleb Williams. Put the pressure on Chicago. I mean, if you see draft order, there's a couple of teams that might need a quarterback that may jump ahead of you to number 1. And if they are willing to give up the farm to do that, God bless them. But me personally, if I'm Washington, I don't. I stay put. I stay there and address, because first of all, quarterback's not the only thing that you need. Let's start there. Number 2, you're going to have to give up a first round this year, a second round this year, and then your first round next year to go get a guy and move up one draft spot. It's not worth it. They have other needs. And again, you can't address everything at once. I understand. But you can't address everything. But you're going to address some things in the draft. It's crazy. No chance would I move up from 2-1 if I'm Washington. Put the pressure on Chicago on what they're going to do. Make them make a decision. If they're willing to trade it and somebody behind you like New England. But New England would be foolish to move up in the draft to take a quarterback for what they'd have to give up, because New England's got a bad roster. And what do you need more than anything? Obviously, you need a quarterback, but you need players. If anything, New England needs to move back. They need to move back and get them some picks, because they need a roster overhaul. Now, they do need a quarterback. I admit that. New England absolutely needs a quarterback because, I mean, what are you going to go with? Mac Jones? Come on. Zappy? No. You're not going to do any of that. So, yeah, New England can't be giving up any draft pick. That's a great point, Chuck. New England can't be jumping up to give up draft picks at all. They need players, and a lot of them, because they got a bad roster. People talking about Bill Belichick. Hey, Bill Belichick ran that into the ground, people. I know you don't want to say it, and I'll admit that he's the GOAT. but he ran New England into the ground. That roster is horrible. Horrible, and he was the one making the decisions. So now somebody made a great point and said, my man Terry over on TikTok said, give Justin Fields to Washington. Well, that would eliminate one of the problems if you trade him. Say, hey, I'll give you the first round pick, but I need Justin Fields. I'll give you my first. Do you give him a first for next year? I think you're going to have to. Is Justin Fields worth 2? Dicey. But you wouldn't have to give him a second this year, though. You could give him a first round, your first round this year, and your first round pick next year. But you wouldn't have to give him the second because you're like, hey, hold on. Yeah, you wouldn't have to do that. So I don't know. It becomes iffy. It becomes dicey. My man, Jalen Fair over on TikTok, or I'm sorry, over on YouTube, said Jamarcus Russell, generational. Yeah, and exactly, Jalen. That's what everybody was saying about Jamarcus Russell. He's generational. Many Christmas. It's just bad. It's just bad. Generational talent. Oh, my God. People will say anything these days, I guess. I don't know. It is what it is. My man Jason Richards said, Kliff banking on Washington getting Williams. I think they are, but I don't. Again, if Washington trades up, I don't know. I think you're right. Somebody pointed it out earlier. I think they got to demand Justin Fields in the trade. That would be so. Okay, we'll trade with you, but we got to get Justin Fields back. So, because then you could turn around and trade Justin Fields to somebody else. It's interesting, people. It's very interesting. Yeah, the Bears may trade Fields to Seattle for Metcalf. No way. There ain't no damn way. If the Bears did that, they're insane. I wouldn't do that. The Bears are better off just drafting a wide receiver. But then again, I'm not big on Metcalf. I've never been a big Metcalf guy. I know that he's big and he's fast, but he runs horrible routes. His hands are just okay. He's not a big 50-50 ball where you throw it up to him and he comes down with it. He's never been that guy. So I'm not that big on Metcalf. Everybody tried to compare Metcalf to Megatron, and I'm like, you guys are insane. He ain't anywhere close to Megatron. But that's just me talking. That's just me. So, Hawks need a QB, and Metcalf has in-house problems. I don't disagree. I'm just saying if I'm Chicago, I don't do that. I wouldn't do that. You could get something else. I mean, wide receiver is definitely a need in Chicago, but there'll be plenty in the draft that you can go get. Plenty. I need picks if I'm Chicago. You need picks. You don't need a player. You need picks. So you can redo that roster and keep it going.